It's still technically Monday today, and I thought today would just be a wash and I wouldn't post anything and I'd break my streak, but I wanted to sit and talk about something anyway and say hello. And I hope your weekend was great and your last week since we've seen each other has been great as well. Um, but today's topic has to do with food and my disillusionment with it lately. I don't know if this is something that is happening everywhere or maybe just where I live, or I don't know, maybe in America in general, but I'm feeling lately like things don't really taste like very much. And I don't mean that in like a COVID sense, um, where people would lose their sense of smell and taste, but I mean it more just like nothing has sort of like a notable flavor anymore. So generally, I would say I feel like the quality of things has gone down, and I think a lot of people have said at least that. But just the fact that things don't really feel like they taste like anything. Like, for example, I really love fruit. I'm a big fruit person, and I would say that lately fruit's just kind of tasting like water and sugar. I don't really think any fruit like alone is tasting like too much different than the other. Like, obviously I can note the difference between them, but I find that when I travel and when I go to um, places like in Europe that I've been to a few times in the last couple years, I would say that when I look at the same thing, like fruit, for example, um, I do know a difference. I feel like there's this distinct flavor. There's something about it that's just more, you know? And for me, aside from that, just generally sucking for anyone, for me, it takes a lot of the fun out of cooking and making stuff. And like, it makes me more inclined to want to buy something that's already been made. So I think typically the things that I make are quite simple, as in, I don't put a ton of sauce on things and I don't, go crazy and dress something up. It's really just the flavor of the thing itself that I'm making. Like, there's nothing like a wonderfully carroty carrot, you know what I mean? Like, just something that really is highlighted by what it's supposed to be. And that's obviously been less true lately. And so I find myself just being really dissatisfied with the things that I make. And I thought maybe it was a good time to try different recipes and things like that, which I think has helped some. But a lot of recipes just call for like putting sauce on stuff, which I'm not judging and I'm not, opposed to, but I think it's just sort of like you're literally trying to cover the taste of something, you know? And I do think there's like maybe some mental work for me to do behind that as like a concept. But I'm just wondering if this has been something that's come up for folks, and how have you gotten back into enjoying cooking and looking forward to it and like kind of getting around this problem, because I find myself gravitating more towards packaged food and more towards things that are like pre-made and just to taste something. And I don't like that because obviously I don't feel as well if I am always eating stuff like that. I really like Mediterranean style food, which is like lemons and olive oil and stuff that feels really fresh and wholesome and tasty. But again, I think I'm just running into sort of like a boredom with your sort of basic flavors of things, since there isn't a whole lot in the ingredients themselves. So I'd love to know what anyone has done with that. And we could discuss the obvious reasons why this is happening, but maybe we'll leave that for another day. But I feel like I used to be someone that cooked so much as a kid. I feel like I was always in the kitchen just making. I used to make a lot of stir fry for some reason. I don't know why. And I have tried to go back to that, which is kind of fun, but it still felt a little bit of the same way that I'm describing now. So there's that. But I used to describe myself as like someone that liked cooking. So anytime someone would ask you like, "Oh, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do? What are you into?" I would always say I like drawing, I like playing music, I like cooking. And then that stopped being true for a long time. I think there are periods of times where each of those were not as true as maybe they once were, or as maybe I wanted them to be. And I think I sort of touched on that in a past video about like phases of creativity and periods of time where you're doing one thing more than another, and that's okay. That doesn't take that thing away from you or away from your identity. But with cooking, it's a pretty sore thumb that's sticking out there. So I don't know how I got to this point. I have a sneaky suspicion that the pandemic had something to do with it, because I cooked a lot for myself. I have never really been a person that orders in or like eats too often at restaurants and stuff. So I think I maybe burnt myself out a little bit in the quarantine, in the pandemic. But that's already a good chunk of time ago now. So I'm hoping that I can find a new place for cooking in my life and what that looks like. I find that when I'm cooking for others, this feels a little bit less the way it does. But still that aspect of things just not really tasting like a whole lot, I think still drives me up the wall. So I'd love to know if anyone's feeling the same way or has run into the same problem a time or two, or maybe like what your go-to recipes are when you're feeling this way that still feel pretty homey and good, and make you happy. So it's a short one today, short-ish, I guess, but I just wanted to make sure to say hello and upload something and keep it going. So thanks for listening if you've been here. If you haven't been here, welcome, and see you next week. Thanks so much, and I hope you have a good night and have had a wonderful day whenever you watch this.